This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dornall and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Saturday, February 26th, 2022. Dornall, how was your week?
Hey, man. It's been a good week. What can I say? Life is fine. Life is good. For those of you interested in cool RPG stuff on the internet, I've got some big news from some of our friends and partners. The Combat Frame Exceed role-playing game from our former co-host, Brian Niemeyer. That's been live for a couple of weeks. You can get that. You can get the paperback on Amazon and of course the ebook. And right here on the channel, he did a test of the RPG. He did about a 2-hour stream going over the battle system. I believe he used Roll20 as the virtual tabletop. So that's pretty cool.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I might have heard something, and I'm going to call this a rumor until there's public confirmation. But the rumor is that there's a role-playing game for Forgotten Ruin that's well nigh on the very, very verge of being released.
It's already been released.
Already been released. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I just backed it yesterday.
It's released, but it's still available for backing.
Oh yeah, it's on Kickstarter. I mean, it's being crowdfunded right now.
Okay, so we need to get Jason on the show, and here's the thing, Dornall. We are booked up for guests through the middle of April. Literally every single Saturday from now until the middle of April.
This is for those of you who are new here, and I'm going to pause and thank everybody hanging out in the chat. I'm glad you guys are here. For those of you who might be new around here, that is an unprecedented level of preparation on the Geek Gab. We are now future thinking.
Next week, we have got Larry Correa and Steve Diamond still planning to come on the show. David West, Sky Hernstrom, Richard Fox, JB Jackson. So yeah, we've also got we want to get Alex Krasova slotted in sometimes. He's got a Kickstarter going on in the middle of March. And now we want to get somebody for the Forgotten Ruin Kickstarter to come on the show because I have a conduit to the designer of the game, so we can bring them on the show. And we may have to do an actual special time show to get them on because all our regular times are eaten up.
Well, I don't know if our listeners could handle much more of us each week. That would be an overload. But
my week, the big notable thing in my week is I've become obsessed for the last couple of days with House of the Rising Sun by the Animals. 1964. Originally Woody Guthrie song, but the Animals just did their cover of it and knocked it out of the park, and I just keep on listening to it over and over again because it starts off awesome and just can't stop being awesome. And I'm telling you, folks, it's an awesome song. You should listen to it.
Oh, I know. It's so awesome that
really
it
is.
used to be you couldn't get much more than an hour into a typical classic rock radio station without hearing it.
Or any movie about New Orleans.
Yeah.
So that was my week.
That was your week, just listening to a song on repeat?
There's a couple of, well, that's not exactly all my week, but the couple of other things that have been happening this week, one of which I can't talk about yet. Well, I told you, but I can't talk about it in public yet. And then continuing work on the thing, of course. So yeah. So the thing I've decided not to talk about until it's closer to being a thing, and then the thing that I can't talk about yet, but when I can, I will tell you about it.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's important to you.
It's a big secret right now.
You're vague booking now.
No, I signed a contract last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got the contract in an email, and
oh, good for you. Well, then you'll be able to talk about it soon.
Yeah, I had to add my address to it and then electronically sign it, and I emailed it back at like 3 a.m. Because that's when I was awake. So yeah, it's officially contracted and stuff. So I can't talk about it, but it's not like this vague thing that may happen sometime, maybe in the future. It's real paperwork that's really been, really signed, and I'm excited about it. And I hope other people are excited about it. When it happens, you'll be able to. It's kind of a flashback to the future sort of thing that has nothing to do with time travel or Back to the Future.
In other RPG news, if you guys are enjoying the BroSR saga on Twitter or in the BroSR blogs, the Trollopolis Reloaded is picking up steam. They've got multiple DMs running games in this giant, always on running world, and the stories are picking back up. So follow Jeffro on Twitter, follow Fluid the Druid on Twitter. Really entertaining stuff. If you, like me, would like to live vicariously through other people playing Dungeons and Dragons the way it was meant to be played.
Didn't all the elves in Trollopolis just disappear?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're notoriously anti-elf in those parts. I've never seen a more in-game racist group of players.
All right, so I wanted to do this, but apparently the tab I had open with all this stuff on it was gone. Also, I'm going to complain for a bit. There used to be this site, this wonderful site, this site that I felt like I could depend on, called the Pen and Paper RPG Database, where if you had a game you wanted to look at and just get some basic stats on, or an author or a person or whatever, you could go there, and it was just a database of all these books and stuff. And apparently it's been shut down, so I had to go to the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive and stuff, to get it. But apparently that tab got closed somehow, somewhere in the last couple of days. So we're going to see if I can do this from memory. Low in the 4 times of the 90s, the peak of Western civilization, or the coming down off the peak of Western civilization, our current guest was instrumental in, unbeknownst to me, making several of my favorite game books. Heavily involved in the design of GURPS Martial Arts 2nd Edition, which I loved with an unreasoning love. And as I've been doing my martial arts for the thing, I honestly, it's been in the back of my mind, and I didn't even know. Was instrumental in creating Unisystem for CJ Carella's Witchcraft for Armageddon, and then Armageddon the End Times. That also showed up in All Flesh Must Be Eaten, which is the premier zombie game of all time. It has never been equaled and never been surpassed. And also showed up in the Buffy role-playing game. Became sort of Eden Studios' house system. And was also instrumental in writing GURPS War Against the Chitor, or Kitor, and several other role-playing games. So a lot of the landmark games in the 1990s, our guest was either wrote and designed themselves, himself, or was involved in writing material for. Now, about 2003 was the last credited role-playing game supplement I could find, and then came back and started writing novels, one series of which I plugged on the show several weeks ago, and I'm going to do it again. It's the Warp Marine Pentology 5-book series, which, again, I loved. So great, and I want to talk about that today, among other things. But he also has a second book of his Lit RPG series coming out, and he's got, Millicef series. He's got a trans-genre book that came out in 2018. He's got a fantasy series, follow-up to the Warp Marines, which I haven't read yet, but it's a trilogy that's on my list. And his new Lit RPG, among other books I haven't mentioned because I am just hitting the highlights of his career. So we want to welcome onto this show, and I hope you picked up the hint from the name of the game, CJ Carella's Witchcraft. We want to welcome CJ Carella onto the show. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on, sir.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here. So, yeah, you pretty much caught most of the highlights right there.
I was going to say, I like the sound of this guy. We should have him on the show.
Yeah, made me sound good.
I just have to say this. DW is a great series.
DW is not too expensive. Sorry, DW. I'm gonna one more joke. He's not too expensive. If you wanted to hire him as your pitch man, he'll help you out.
Okay, I'll have my people call his people.
That's right. Like this is Daddy Warpig at a 7. If you want him at 10, turn the volume down on your headset. Sorry, man. Go ahead.
No, that was it. We had so let's do this the kind way. Tell us about your current series, because we might as well start off with a bang.
All right. Well, I'm currently writing a Lit RPG, which is a sort of a pretty popular subgenre of fantasy that involves gaming elements within the story. So I'm currently on the second book of the series, and I'm also continuing to release the book in episode form on Kindle Vella, which is a new Amazon program that lets you put up episodes one chapter at a time, basically. So this is book 2. Book 1 is called Killer Mode, and the main premise is a gamer girl, a college student, sits down to play a typical MMORPG, but instead finds herself in the universe of the MMORPG in the body of her character. And from there, she happens to steal the powers of a goddess. So now she's playing the game as it were in God mode. Except it's not as much fun as one would think. mostly because everybody's trying to either take it from her and kill her or just kill her.
Now,
So
I'm
it's
not
mostly,
I'm not a lit RPG fan, so I'm sorry to jump in. I just need to know something about the world. Now, is the premise part of the premise that once you're in the RPG world, you can actually be killed in it?
oh yes, this is what they call Portal or lit RPG rather than virtual reality, which is the other sub variety. So in this one, she's in a world. It's a physical world. It just has different rules. But yeah, you can be killed. Now, certain types of people have the ability to respawn a number of times, but it's a limited number of extra lives. So they can and they do die permanently.
Uh-huh.
You remember Order the Stick, right?
I remember that comic, yeah.
Yeah. So how they run around and talk about getting XP and leveling up and learning a new spell. Many lit RPG, or at least the beginning, the foundational lit RPG books from Japan were basically Dungeons and Dragons game books set in worlds like Dungeons and Dragons, because that where characters would go into a role-playing game world and immediately be subject to game mechanics of a role-playing game, of a tabletop role-playing game, where, they would level up and get more powerful, and they would learn spells, and they would be, consciously knowing that they were gaining experience and stuff. Only it was serious, not necessarily, it was comedic because, Japan, but it was also like real threat.
Right, and this is pretty much the same kind of a story. You have all these gaming elements. In fact, when a character hits somebody, actually a little number pops up showing how much damage they did. But they also see they also see the guts spilling out from a belly wound. So it's and they get all the feels and smell of the real thing. So it's and people from our world who ends up in that world have to come to grips with that reality, whereas the natives obviously have been living with it all their lives. So that's basically the flavor of the genre.
And so that was the first book. You said the God Killer.
Yeah, God Killer Mole is the first novel of that series.
So now that she's got the powers of a god and presumably survives everybody trying to take them from her, where do you go from there? What's the second book about?
Well, in the second book, she steals a teleporting sphinx, and as in the statue rather than the monster, and ends up hopping around this universe, getting in trouble. And she's still being hunted down, among other things, by the cult of the goddess whose powers she stole. So she's still being hunted. She's trying to survive. She's made several friends amongst the locals, plus a few other players that got abducted into this world. And they have their own baggage and issues that she has to deal with. So it's a bit of a soap opera and a long chase scene with lots of killing.
And with lots of killing. You have my attention, sir.
Oh yeah, everything can be made better with some ultra violence. So
that's what my dad used to say.
So yeah, I don't really do a slice of life. I do more like a slice across the throat. So that's the kind of style I like to write.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I love the whole pulp revolution idea that tried to bring back the good old entertainment of the 30s and also the 70s and 80s, because I grew up reading sort of like so-called garbage pulp fiction, like the Mac Bolan Executioner series and the Modesty Blaze novels. And they warped my mind, so now I'm passing it on to a new generation. So I mostly focus on action and adventure, and try to make things entertaining.
You're stupefied,
seems
John.
You got me. You got me. I was giving DW a chance to jump back in. Sorry. Although I can't help but think that, based on your long career writing RPGs, that's your sweet spot anyway. You wouldn't. We wouldn't play RPGs if it weren't for the adventure.
Oh yeah, I mean it's your basic wish fulfillment plus escapist literature combined with game rules, which I mean a big subset of nerd culture loves, including myself. So yeah, that's what makes role playing games entertaining, in my opinion. So yeah, but for me, Lit RPG was like a natural development since I spent almost 20 years writing games. So I actually designed the basic rules of the subsystem overlaying the game world and the fantasy universe.
How playable is that? Like, could you license that to a game company to actually create an MMO?
Well, no, because I based it more on a World of Warcraft style game. So the rules would really need a lot of computing power to develop. It has a lot of details that it would be hard to replicate on pen and paper, although it can probably be done. You can probably adapt it to an RPG. I just don't think I'm going to have the time to be able to do it myself. But if somebody ever wants to license it, just have their people call my people being me and my cat. So.
Well, I mean, Activision Blizzard just got purchased by Microsoft, so they might be looking for more IPs. We'll talk to them about it.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Do you follow MMOs in life?
Yeah, I haven't played WoW in a while, but I still watch the reviews of whatever iteration they're on, and of course I heard about all the scandals amongst top management. It's funny because I interviewed for a position as lead developer for the game that was going to be called Titan that never came out. So I got to speak to some of those people, but. I think now in retrospect, I'm lucky I didn't get the job.
Yeah, it sounds like they had a lot of problems, and that project was going to be doomed from the start.
Yeah. So, and who knows what's going to happen now?
Well, full disclosure, I work at Microsoft, but I don't know anybody in Microsoft gaming right now, so I could find out.
Okay, and I'll just let me reassure you, I love all Microsoft products. Love them to death.
Well, I mean, if on the subject, to be sincere, there's a lot of them that I really really like, and I'm thankful for. But Microsoft and all the other big companies, they've earned their reputations.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Yeah, I can see that. But I mean, I still use Word for my writing. So
I stopped using Word when they went to a subscription service. I can't do it. It sticks in my craw.
I don't blame you. I mean, I the only reason I'm doing it myself is because I just take it off my taxes, so it's not a terrible expense. But yeah, I wasn't thrilled with that.
Yeah, once companies figured that out, whoo boy.
Yeah.
We read you, DW.
I'm trying to ask this question in a way that doesn't make it sound like a question that really kind of annoys me because I know the answer to it already. Oh, crap. See, the question that annoys writers, and I know this question annoys writers because I've heard writers say how annoying the question is. Hey, where do you get your ideas from?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you hear that a lot, but
That's not the question I want to ask is.
Oh, good. I hate that question. No,
Because I was about to just hang up.
no, yeah, carry
on. I'm abruptly changing the subject because I'm the host and I can do that. In Warp Marine, and let me give a little introduction for the audience before we jump there, so I can at least cushion the abrupt change in subject. Warp Marine is a military sci-fi series, and it's set in a universe where the human race has, for about 100 years, been out among the stars, among about 14 different alien stellar nations. And it has been struggling and fighting to survive and expand in the midst of very, very harsh dog-eat-dog politics. Basically, it's grab what you can grab, and if you are stronger than someone, they will roll over you and take everything you've got and probably wipe you out. The first time humanity even learned that there were aliens that actually existed, this alien race came to Earth, dropped these special kind of weapons on major cities and destroyed them and killed a huge percentage, most of the human race. The only people who survived were those outside of major metropolitan areas. So after that, one of the races that the race that was responsible for leading this predatory species to us helped get us on our feet, and we decided to go really, really aggressive just to protect ourselves. And in due time, we established a policy of don't start nothing, won't be nothing. And then the race that tried to wipe out humanity, we turned around and genocided. We wiped them out. There are none of them left. And then a couple of ally species who really took a couple of species who were allies to them who took offense at that and started trying to wipe humanity out. We said, oh, you want some too? Have some. And did the same thing. And there's a lot of other things involved there. And the question I had to ask is, the way it was described in the books was Jeffersonian, that worldview. And I'm just wondering, what was it that gave you the inspiration for that kind of politics? Because that is, and I will admit, I am not an exhaustive reader of MIL-SF. I have sampled a lot of the new modern indie Amazon MIL-SF, but your Warp Marine books predate all of those by quite a bit. And so I'm just wondering, what is it that inspired you to use that kind of politics for the Wart Marine books? Because I think that really, really made the world, the universe, compelling.
I would say two things inspire me. First, the writings of David Drake, the guy who wrote Hammers and Slammers for Baen Books.
Yes.
He wrote very grim, very realistic Mil SF, based mainly on his experiences in the Vietnam War. So that was a big inspiration. And the other one was Star Trek, in that I wanted to do the polar opposite of Star Trek. So instead of having like nice, wise races and the occasional bad guy off in a corner, no, everybody's a bad guy. Not just the bad guys. It's a setting, as you say. It's based on power politics. It's people do whatever they think they can get away with. So I figure a military setting requires a harsh environment where humanity has to toughen up. They have to try to be the scariest people in the block. One of the generals in the story basically says, "Well, in this world, we are the Klingons. We are the toughest guys in the galaxy." So the idea was trying to create very many sources for conflict. So I used my what I knew about world history and tried to apply it to different species and that have different cultures and civilizations, but in the end they're just trying to survive and, if possible, wipe out the competition. It's very Darwinian.
See, man, this is awful because I sound like a fanboy every time I open my mouth, but I'm going to do it again and I don't even care. One of the things I thought was really insightful that I haven't seen in other sci-fis is that the natural allies and enemies people tend to fall into were a function of, in a large part, the appearances of the species. That is, if you had characters who literally start, their stomachs start churning, they start vomiting just standing in the room with another member of a species, they're unlikely to even be able to ally with that species. So you had, I believe it was the lampreys, with the large lamprey mouth in the center of their face, almost looks like, an anus.
Yeah, basically.
And
in fact, nobody likes them. Yeah, and
nobody likes the anus mouth aliens.
No, and to compound their ugliness, they're communists. So
I don't know what's worse.
Yeah,
the species that the humans get along with the most are those that are somewhat reminiscent of dogs.
Yep, the puppies.
I mean, they're the puppies, yeah. And because that just naturally makes humans kind of go, oh. I mean, even if they're just regular people and they're no more or less, good or bad than the other race, they're still they still have their own self-interest. They still are, just as prone to being warlike and violent and stuff, but they want to help us because they feel ashamed at causing the near genocide of Earth, but they make human beings go, oh, and so humans find them natural allies. And that's something that I've never seen touched upon in other sci-fi stories before, is that really it's an intrinsic, innate reaction that that informs which races become allies that in many ways you can't even help. It's like random biological factors determine who you're going to team up with, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think one aspect that doesn't get touched a lot in science fiction is that humans and probably most sapient races, if there are any others, are more likely to be rationalizing than rational. In other ways, they'll make excuses for whatever their natural impulses and instincts want them to do. So the idea that a lot of their decision making is going to be based on something as simple as how pleasing their appearance, the alien's appearance is, I think it's part and parcel of the human condition.
I mean, spiders, psychologically speaking, are just really creepy to human beings. They just set something off in us. They're revolting. And so if you had an alien species that looked like or moved like spiders move, because it isn't just their looks, it's how they move. We're not going to be close friends or trust them or become close allies with them. However close we may have, actually be in, real politic terms of, well, we both are enemies with this other species, or we are so far apart in territory that our interests don't come into conflict or whatever. I mean, the best you could hope for in that kind of situation is we're on opposite sides of the galaxy, so we really don't bother each other, and we just kind of ignore each other's existence. But yeah, that's just kind of an inherent thing. Or aliens who fall into sort of the uncanny valley. If you have an alien race that falls into the uncanny valley, you're not going to be close with them. They're going to creep you out every time you're around it, even if they look human. The closer they get to human, the creepier they get. And so you may actually find it more easy to ally with someone like the puppies because they're enough like something you find cute to be allying with, but not so close to human as to set off your weirdness detector.
Right.
So yeah, that I thought that was a fascinating concept that I'd never seen explored in sci-fi, is the kind of the innate tendencies of human psychology and how that would have a huge effect on things. When I think it was accurate, and I thought it was well played out in the politics of the setting and even individual reactions. And it added a bunch of verisimilitude to the setting. John, save me from fanboying.
I can't. I love the. I think you said it succinctly. What would it look like if humans were rationalizing instead of rational, which is, I think, closer to the truth than any of us really wants to admit. And it's. I think it's a nice break from Star Trek in a different way, because you said one thing about, oh, I want there to be more bad guys and not a bunch of wise sapient races. But the other thing that Star Trek takes for granted is that sort of that rational nature, right? Like the Vulcans are kind of the space elves. They're supposed to be the ultimate good guys. I mean, until they made up Enterprise anyway.
Yeah.
And then but yeah, I like that aspect of it, that deliberate walk away from the sort of pseudo-intellectual guys with screwdrivers kind of sci-fi, and that sort of speaks to your upbringing, that you are here to write pulp adventure. You're not interested in Star Trek.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love well, at least the classic version of Star Trek.
I
But
mean, Kirk's running front kick is on Khan is
oh yeah,
it's television history right there.
yeah. But even when it came to the next generation, I started finding some of their basic principles to be rather revolting, and it's only gotten worse since then. So yeah, I wanted something with a lot more realpolitik rather than some illusion that progress is inevitable and things can only get better, which I think can be as damaging as thinking that there is no hope. I think that you need to have a balance, but the idea that everything is going to be just great and dandy and everybody can get along, I think it's an illusion. And or at least for my setting, I wanted something where no, this is a nasty neighborhood, and to survive, you're going to have to be the nastier person in the neighborhood.
It makes sense. It reminds me of a little bit of Ender's Game, and I hope you take that as a compliment, because I think one of the things that sort of informed the worldview and the setting of Ender's Game is this idea that, hey, when you're confronted with an alien race that you cannot communicate with at all, and they appear hostile, then sometimes your only option is to go all in, because they're doing the same thing to you. And that seems like a little more grounded in reality. I'd like to think that if we encountered extraterrestrials, they would also be curious, and they wouldn't necessarily want to be like, well, they must have a resource-rich world, so let's go take it, right? But you know what? That could happen. It's likely to happen.
Yeah, I mean, really, first contact is fraught with peril, and I think if you ask any of the pre-Columbian civilizations that encountered a more advanced culture, they will be happy to tell you, except they're all dead.
Oh, why did I laugh? Go to hell, guys.
No, I thought it was meant to be funny. I guess my sense of humor tends to be a little on the dark side.
Go ahead.
There was a book that I just spotted while I was doing my research. Did you catch that, Dorno? I did research. Man,
this is the most prepared we've ever been.
I know, it's kind of disconcerting. I don't know what I'm going to do. If people expect me to do this for every show, that's I don't know how I'm going to live up to that. No, really. The book you published in 2018, the transgenre book, which I haven't read yet because, and I'll be perfectly frank here, I'm out of money till the 1st because it's the end of the month, and people run out of money at the end of the month. It sounded really, really fascinating. It was about a world where, and I'm just badly paraphrasing the Amazon description, which I'm assuming is paraphrasing the novel, so I'm sure I've lost a lot of the nuance in this, about a world where people from a bunch of other worlds, including like steampunk worlds and various other worlds, are going on, going together to go do various things. It said it was the beginning of the series, but you've only done one of those. And it sounded fascinating to me because my big love in role-playing was Torg.
Great game.
And so I'm just wondering, why is it that you never followed up on that?
Well, I had a lot of fun writing that book. The title is Outlands Justice. And it was sort of like it was very pop fiction oriented. It was sort of like Conan the Barbarian meets True Grit, the novel or the movie. So it had like an old west steampunk fantasy flavor, but unfortunately the sales didn't justify writing sequels. I mean, the novel is self-contained enough that it didn't need a sequel, but I was hoping I'd be able to continue with the characters. But unfortunately, in the end, I am running a business, so if the sales don't meet a minimal threshold, I have to move onto something else.
That is, yeah.
Is that rational or
Yeah.
rationalizing?
No, that's rational. That's the world we live in.
Yeah, and it's tough in the indie fiction world. You kind of have to hustle. It's you don't get big advances. Although I don't think nobody is getting big advances nowadays, or very few people at least. And you're basically living off the income of your direct sales. Amazon pays in 60 days, so it's like whatever you sold 2 months ago is what you're getting this month. And you have to write to the market. If there aren't enough people who want a cyberpunk Western fantasy, or maybe enough people who follow me didn't want that, I'm gonna try something else.
So the business kind of interests me too. Can you approximate, or do you have numbers on how many people do you have? How many sales do you get from people who are fans of you versus fans of whatever market you're writing to that month?
Well, I have a sense. I mean, there is a number of people who will write anything with my name on it, but it's only like maybe 1,000, 2,000 people at its broadest, and there's probably like 500 people who will buy whatever I write, short stories, in any genre. But for the rest, I have a military science fiction fan group that will buy anything mil SF and won't buy anything else. And now I have a lit RPG group that will do the same on that side. So yeah, it's the market has some pretty hard segments, and some people don't like to read all kinds of different genres, which, I mean, it baffles me a little because I read everything. I read everything from traditional horror to hard science fiction to all kinds of anything in between. But some people just like what they like, and I mean that's the way it is.
Just a conjecture for you. How much of that do you think is human nature? How much of that is the nature of Amazon and other online shopping and advertising in general shape human nature?
I'm sure I'm sure Amazon does shape things a lot, and I name Amazon in particular because they are about 80% of the ebook market, which is probably 80% of the independent writers' income, if not more. And they definitely, well, I mean, they separate everything by categories. They'll base what they advertise to you based on what you've bought. So it sort of reinforces people's reading habits and makes them less likely to try different things. So there's definitely a lot of influence there. Whereas, like, before I use Amazon a lot, I used to shop at Bain Books website, and every month they had like 5 different books that could be of completely different genres, and I more often than not I ended up buying 3 or 4 of them. So yeah, things have changed.
That makes sense. I want to shift gears a little bit to the RPGs because it's no secret that I'm not much of a reader, but I'm kind of sad that I missed the heyday of the work that you were doing. I was a big D&D kid back then, and so I've got all the Planescape, or I had all the Planescape books and everything like that, but never got into GURPS or anything or any of those other systems like that. So I'd love to hear more about the books that you did and your experiences in the industry. And I'm also a little curious to know what you think about it these days.
All right. Well, I the first RPG that I ever looked at before I even really knew what RPGs were was Deities and Demigods, the old Dungeons and Dragons supplement, and that fascinated me. And from there, I got into role playing games. This is in the 80s, and I eventually found GURPS, which appealed to me a lot more because the rules made a lot more sense than D&D ever did, at least in my head. And I wrote a couple of articles for them, and then they invited me to write martial arts. And that's how I got started. And I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was, in many ways, it was just a hobby, because really writing a supplement or two a year it's not exactly a career. I didn't really become a full-time game designer until Palladium Books recruited me to work for them. And I did it for a few years, and that was a lot of fun. I wrote a lot of Rifts books. And after that, when I left Palladium, I sort of bounced around for a while, and then Eden Studios picked up the Uni system that I had designed for Witchcraft, released those books, and then they got the Buffy license, which I think is my, in many ways, is my favorite project, because I was a big fan of the show, and I did my best to convey the flavor of the TV show into the game rules, and I think it worked. So I had a lot of fun with that. So that's basically my career in a nutshell.
And when did you? I mean, you talked about when you stopped, but what do you think about the industry now? What do you think about the books coming out and everything like that? I mean, not to bite you too much. I can't believe any of these companies are still in business.
No, my general feeling is garbage fire, trash fire. I mean,
fair.
Yeah. So no. I stopped going to RPG net because they became insufferable, and all I see is a bunch of insufferable, entitled children wrecking everything that other generations built over nothing. I mean, I keep hearing complaints about how racist and segregationist all gaming was, and I went to conventions all the time, a big swarthy guy with an accent, and I always felt welcome. And so did every game that I ever participated in. So it's all bullcrap. And in just to virtue signal, they've ruined the hobby as far as I'm concerned. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
All right. I almost regret asking, but I don't. That's pretty well said, I think. I have the same experience. I'm not big and swarthy or anything, but to answer all those people who claim to know anything about the hobby from the 80s or 90s or early aughts, a gaming table is a gaming table. And anybody who wanted to play the game was always welcome, and so the complaints about gatekeeperism and so on and so forth, they always rang hollow to me.
Yeah, I mean, they don't get it. The gate was built around us. People didn't want to have anything to do with gaming geeks in the 80s and 90s. We were a marginalized group. And
I mean,
anybody
you have to admit, when you went to the local gaming convention, there were a lot of smelly old guys with donut crust.
Oh, yeah. I mean, gamers, I mean, the old generations of gamers aren't exactly lovable. And I mean, I know that as much as anybody else, but they had their community, and they weren't harming anybody, and they weren't keeping anybody out. Nobody wanted to be in. It's just that Now that it's become more mainstream, they've basically moved into those spaces. And just to borrow the grievance culture terms, they invaded our spaces, as it were, and now they kicked us out. They're invaders, they're an invasive species.
The woke cult is an invasive species. I like it.
So,
Um,
yeah, I'm going.
well, and the games themselves, have you, what was the last RPG you played?
Well, I still play RPGs, but I mostly play a small indie game that's fantasy based that a friend of mine wrote called Glory Road. Um, Mostly because everybody who I play with likes that game. I haven't really purchased an RPG in at least a decade. In fact, I didn't even know that White Wolf wasn't writing White Wolf games until a few years ago. So, I used to buy a lot of games, but the quality got worse, and I didn't see much reason to buy them.
Oh, you're not the only one, for sure.
Yeah,
Which is funny because just to get on my own soapbox, one of the nicest things about RPGs was, especially when they became the big money splat book companies in the 90s. Even though we never played those games, the artwork was top quality. You had the Seattle crew like Anson Maddox and the Ron Spencers and Tony DeLizzi sold the entire Planescape setting to my generation of gamers. And,
Timothy Bradstreet, my boy.
oh my goodness, Bradstreet and I think Golish is the guy he worked with. Bradstreet and Golish did some outstanding, especially for White Wolf. Like in particular, their style was perfect for White Wolf.
And, yeah, beautiful books.
And even though the books can be beautiful today, the artwork it's a little twee, it's a little WotC, of course, is the big bad in this area. They're the bad guys now, because they have Dungeons and Dragons has a house style now, and each book has its own style, sort of, but they've also got a house style that you got to stick to. So everything looks a little too polished, whereas back in the day it was definitely, a company barely being able to put food on the table, hiring some freelance artist.
You look at like Dark Sun. Brahm sold Dark Sun. I think Dark Sun was an awesome setting. I love Dark Sun. I wish I had had a chance to play more Dark Sun than I did. But Brahm, his style defined what Dark Sun was, because the way he drew and the way his characters looked, and he did great art for a lot of things. I believe Brahm did great art for a game, a little Rifts game or a little Palladium game called Nightbane, which was coincidentally written by our guest.
Yep, that was my one Brahm cover was for Nightbane.
But you see, I did research for this show. But Brahm's look, just the way he drew his characters, infused Dark Sun with the feeling that was Dark Sun. The art and the feel of the text and the feel of the setting they were going for were so closely matched. It was perfect. And the thing that worries me about 5th edition is exactly what you said, is all this twee, I don't even know how to describe it, because I just shudder every time I think of it. I'm not even interested in analyzing it. I haven't bought it. I haven't read it. I'm not interested in analyzing it. I've got better things to do with my time. But I'm afraid that the art and the text and the intent of the gameplay is as closely matched as Dark Sun was with the Brahm artwork. That is, this is what they genuinely want you to see D&D as being.
Yeah, because they're building that brand instead of illustrating a game.
And it's awful. It's not D&D.
Well, no, it's a Hasbro product.
Which is amazing because Wizards of the Coast, for all their faults, and they've always been a woke company, but they were with Magic the Gathering, they had that Seattle scene of artists working for them, and they did amazing stuff.
Yeah, they also kind of killed the RPG business industry along the way, but that's not really their fault. It's Magic the Gathering's fault. But yeah, no, definitely the art was a huge influence. I mean, you also had, I mean, the Shadowrun books. I collected those faithfully, even though I never ran a straight Shadowrun campaign, because the story and the art were very compelling to me. So, definitely.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Like we definitely have a love-hate relationship with Shadowrun here.
Yeah, I love Shadowrun. He hates the game system.
Yeah, I love the setting. I never even tried to play the game system. I just adapted it to whatever I was running at the time. I always like mixing and maxing, mixing and mixing things together, different game settings, different systems. So that's usually I usually strip games for parts and then incorporate them into whatever I'm running. So
okay, so go ahead.
Yes, no, that was basically it.
So it's in terms of business, awful business. The hobby's in a bad place right now. But if you could write any game right now, what would interest you right now? Is there something that you haven't written that you would love to?
Well, I mean, I would have liked to have done more. I really wanted to see the book for superheroes that I wrote for Unisystem released, because that was a lot of fun, and I created a lot of fun settings for it. Although I ended up using one of those settings for the first few novels that I wrote, the Armageddon Girl series. So I kind of did that, but yeah, it would have been nice to have that game out.
All right. CJ Superheroes. I love it.
Yeah, so I've always liked to. I've always been sort of oriented towards power gaming, and people in Rifts hated me because I tended to make things very overpowered. And I don't regret it one bit.
Chat loves the RPG talk. We got a question from Catholic Lancer. He'd love to hear more about Magic killing RPGs.
All right. Well, when Magic the Gathering came out, it completely upset the sort of the ecosystem of the gaming market, which was basically dedicated hobby stores that they weren't very profitable, but they basically were oriented towards, you had your your role playing game section, you had your miniatures and wargaming and even assembling planes or ships section. So it was very hobby oriented. Magic was such an infusion of quick, easy money that the stores shifted their focus completely away from hobbies, which became just a little sideshow, and they went full on for the collectibles market. And that pretty much wiped out a whole bunch of independent gaming companies, because they could no longer get the minimum orders that they would normally be expected to get from stores. And I saw that happen right before me in the early 90s. At that point, I was working at Palladium Books, and so I saw it from the inside. And it's kind of funny because Palladium almost killed Wizards before they even discovered Garfield and Magic the Gathering in a lawsuit. So the whole gaming industry might have changed, be completely different now if nobody had given Garfield his chance to release his game.
That's it. That's the key.
That lawsuit was such garbage.
It was garbage.
And I am passionate about that because I loved that project. I bought a copy of the PDF for that project just 5-6 years ago.
Oh, I had a book. I had the book. Yeah, I love that they had all the rules for all the different game systems.
Oh, so, I was looking forward to like the government order and the underworld order and the military order. I went to Gen Con in '97 and I harassed a Wizards of the Coast, and this is right after they bought TSR. I harassed a Wizards of the Coast staffer. I'm like, so this was like what, 5 years after they started, or 3 years after they started Magic the Gathering. I harassed them about, hey, are you guys ever going to publish the military order and stuff? Turns out, no. I guess the lawsuit really aggravated them so much they weren't going to do it. But man, I wanted those other books. I still want to be able to go to another alternate universe where all of those other supplements for the Primal Order, the other ones were published so I could pick them up. I have all the like chessboards, planes, and contention, and all the other supplements for the Primal Order that actually got published. I bought them. I have them in my role-playing milk crates right against the wall over here.
Nice.
That was I loved that book. I loved that book just unreasonably. It was spectacular design. It was spectacular concepts. It was so well written, so well thought through. Just fabulous on every single level. One of the best role-playing supplements I've ever seen.
No, definitely.
Speaking of fanboying,
was that a setup for me? Was that a setup for something? Because all I had was a joke. You ready? So that's what you do if you have a time machine. You got two choices: go back in time and kill Hitler, or go back in time and stop Magic the Gathering. One of two. I don't think it would have saved TSR though. TSR was already knee deep in questionable decisions.
Yeah, they might have gone under. Or just lingered on as a much smaller company. They weren't doing well, and I think eventually somebody was going to bring the collectible card games out, and I would have done it. Yeah, it's hard to think that there was a way to stop it.
Yeah, and it was a genius game. It is. It just. I don't know how it's still playable after so many years. But it was a genius game, and unfortunately it was the business, like you said. I saw a couple of game stores. A game store opened up actually in Salt Lake City when I lived there, and it was a wonderful place, sort of a more adult, family-oriented game store. And they refused to stock the little packages of crack cocaine. They just did board games, and they had family nights and board game nights, and they had a dedicated Dominion night and everything like that. They were only open for a couple of years before the Magic was on the shelves, and they had Friday Night Magic because you do have to buy food and pay rent.
Well, yeah, I mean the money was just too good, and of course when crashes came, as they always do, a bunch of stores just went out of business completely. So yeah, it was a very it destroyed the industry, other than the big guys, and of course Wizards bought Hasbro and became the biggest guy. So, but it was hard to be anybody other than Wizards or TSR after that.
We're almost out of time, so I want to switch back to your fiction. Do you have any exciting news you want to spoil for us that's not on your site yet? Do you have any tidbits you can give us? Anything coming up?
Well, nothing I can really talk about. I have a contract for a series that hopefully I'll be able to wrap up sometime this year, and then I'll be able to talk more about it. But right now, I'm trying to finish the current series I'm working on, and another lit RPG series that it's set in the same universe that starts with Twilight Templar. I'm writing the last book of that series as well. So when that's done, and this series is done, I'm probably going to work on something completely different, or another lit RPG series. It's going to depend on a few factors, but nothing I can really talk about.
All right. Well, just let DW know when you're ready. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to give you another opportunity. We're going to wrap it up now, but do you have anything else that you want to talk about and or give a final plug for what's coming up for you?
Well, I'll say I'll keep. I'm definitely in it for the long haul. So I'm going to plan to be writing at least another 3 or 4 books this year, and I hope that people give the Gold Killer Chronicles a chance. I think it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun writing it. It is a lot of fun writing it, and I think readers will catch some of that fun.
Awesome. And I do have a link to your site as well as the latest book here in the show notes. So anybody watching this later, just check out the description on YouTube for the links to those. I hope,
Awesome.
and you've done so much stuff. I hope there's something for everyone to find in it. I'll take a step back and thanks so much to chat. It's great seeing you guys here. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope everybody who listens later found someone or something they like. That's it for me this week. Daddy Warpig, I will let you finish.
All right, folks, we want to thank everybody who tuned in live to listen to the show. We once again, as always, thanks to our distinguished and awesome fan base, had a great discussion in chat. If you also tune in live, you can come in and join the discussion. We are here just about every Saturday, just about the same time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on youtube.com/geekgab. That is youtube.com/geekgab. And like I mentioned before, we are scheduled for next Saturday. Larry Correa and Steve Diamond coming to talk about their new book, which is releasing on, I believe, Friday, March 1st. So you can go and hear about the book right after its release. We'll have a great discussion about that and probably some other stuff too. For those of you that can't listen live, feel free to listen later. We will be just as happy to give you some entertainment, some information, and some completely awesome energy to inject directly into your veins. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, I almost forgot. We are also available on SoundCloud.com. We are also available on the Google Play Store, and we are also available on the iTunes Store. So you can download and listen to us on the device of your choice. Feel free to subscribe and have all of the Geek Gab goodness that you so desperately need in your life. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We are signing out for today, but don't you worry. Don't you fret. We will be back.